Thank you very much. It is a great honor to me participating and moderating this teleconference or exchange of views. I will welcome Dr. Aref and also Ihya. Both you have a very rich CV. People, they know you very well, and I'm happy that I have this opportunity to meet and moderate this discussion. Concerning the whole procedure, I let you speak or do your contribution, short contribution, I hope, for opening the discussion, and then we continue either with exchanging questions or getting questions from the audience. And I hope that we can proceed accordingly. Allow me to say something. It is a pity that our founder of the Foreign Affairs Institute, Mr. Loukas Katsonis, could not participate in this meeting due to an urgent meeting with members of the government. So Loukas today cannot be with us, but I'm sure that the whole conference and the whole meeting will be very fruitful and productive, and would be also very enlightened since the developments are running very fast in the region, and Libya is very important in a very important momentum, but not only for the region, I mean the wider MENA region, but also for the international community. So if you allow me to change a little bit the protocol, normally ladies first, then beauty follows. Allow me to invite Dr. Aref to take the floor. And excuse me, Ihya, for this, but thank you very much. It's very kind of you. So the floor is yours, Dr. Aref.
Axiothimi sevasti fili que se sen delphi. Quieres que kiri kalisperas se olsas. I wish I could speak in the ancient Greek of my own country. It was one of the languages spoken in Libya at one time. But forgive my ignorance of your beautiful language. I shall speak in English. First of all, I would like to express my delight at attending this, having this opportunity to attend this program organized by the Foreign Affairs Institute in Athens, and for the kind invitation to speak about the upcoming Libyan elections. I would like to particularly thank the hosts, especially the very Reverend Dr. Aristarchos Grekas, Mr. Loukas Katsionis, and also Ambassador Theodoros, Theodorou, Ms. Ihya Burweila, and Mr. Stefanos Mitelineos from the Tribune. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I will try to be as brief as I can in my opening remarks so that we can have an opportunity for a more active engagement through questions and answers, which was a favored methodology of the ancient Greek philosophers who once populated Cyrene in Libya. So let me just say that we are looking forward to the elections, both presidential and parliamentarian. Libyan elections are expected to take place on the 24th of December. This would be the presidential elections. And after that, the parliamentarian elections with a gap of about 50 days. There will be a slight shifting of the election date because the final list of candidates has not been published yet. And the 24th may become the date of the publication of the list, or possibly if the list is published before that, it can become the start of the campaigning by the various candidates. We are trying to maintain in Libya the significance of the 24th of December because it's the date of Libya's independence. And that is why the symbolism of the date is very important. And also because we have had experiences with postponement and procrastination over the elections for multiple years now. The first talk of the presidential elections was actually all the way back to 2014, and they kept getting postponed. 2017, the Sarraj government announced them and then reneged on the promise. Then 2018, the Paris conference announced the elections in December 2018, and again they got postponed. And then we had a couple of wars, and then finally we are having these elections, hopefully in the next days. The situation is quite tense. The elections are quite problematic in multiple ways, mainly because of the entry of two names. The name of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the son of the late ruler of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, and also the entry of the name of the current prime minister, who is supposed to be a unity government prime minister, which was set up by the UN in order to prepare for the elections. And he had signed, as part of the UN process, a declaration not to run for the election. But unfortunately, he changed his mind and decided to run, despite the pledges he signed. Also, in the parliamentarian law that's governing the elections, anybody in any government position is supposed to have resigned their position 3 months prior to the election date, and the prime minister hadn't done that. So he actually violated both his pledge and the clause number 12 of the law. That's why myself and a couple of other candidates, plus some independent members from the dialogue committee and another citizen, we sued to exclude the prime minister from the candidates list, and we won the case. But then he won the appeal. But because there were some questions about how the appeal happened, the Electoral Commission has decided to move the case to the Supreme Judicial Council of Libya. And there was again a problem in the Judicial Council because the head of the council was replaced yesterday. And now the new council head is re-looking at the judgments that were made, not only in the case of Burweila, who's the current prime minister, but also in the case of Saif al-Islam's Gaddafi's candidature. So it is because of really the problematic nature of the entry of these two names that the publication of the list has been delayed. The Electoral Commission issued a statement saying that they are working on it, that they will be working closely with the Supreme Judicial Council, plus a parliamentarian committee that was established for the purpose, a 5-man parliamentarian committee, plus their own legal counselors, in order to bring closure to the issues surrounding the list. Once the list gets published, then campaigning officially starts, and then we will have the presidential elections. The number of candidates is very large. It's almost 80 candidates. And the number of citizens registered and who have picked up their cards to be able to participate is over 2,700,000. So there is definitely an expressed willingness to participate as candidates, and also for the citizens to participate as voters. And therefore, we are looking forward to these elections. These elections are vital for the future of Libya and for getting out of the transitional period, which has lasted a decade, since 2011. And yes, it is fraught with difficulty, but there is no reneging on the elections or going back, because if there are no elections, the only other way to settle differences would be, unfortunately, not peaceful means in Libya. So in order to avoid further civil strife and further war, it's very important that we have these elections as early as we can and as much on time as possible. And the international community has been supporting the holding of the elections on time, and they have been supporting the HNEC, which is the High Commission for elections, as much as they can. And I am currently in Tunisia, in Tunis, in consultation with the diplomats. I met with the American ambassador, the French ambassador, and the ambassador of Germany, the ambassador of the European Union, and working also hard with the other candidates. We have formed a kind of a consortium of candidates, and we have issued a statement in support of the elections, and also in saying in unclear terms that we refuse the conflict of interest between the current government and the attempt of the Prime Minister to become a candidate, because he controls the process of preparation for the election, controls the media, controls the interior security apparatus, and also controls the funds of the country. He's already spent over 93 billion dinars within the few months that he has been in power. With this note, I will stop here, and maybe we can explore things further in the question and answer period after we hear my colleague, Ms. Ihya Burweila.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aref. Now I'll give the floor to Ihya for a short contribution to the discussion, and we will continue with the procedure after finishing Ihya her contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. First, I'd like to thank all the organizers, Dr. Theodoros, Dr. Nail, Mr. Stefanos Mykoleos, Father Grekas, Foreign Affairs Institute, Foreign Affairs, and the Tribune, and of course, Mr. Lucas Katsonis, who cannot be with us today. Just listening to Dr. Aref speak, I was overwhelmed by a reminder of the threats to the elections, but also the enthusiasm of Libyans for the opportunity to finally choose their own leaders. And where legitimacy is absent, I think violence follows, and injustice and corruption. And Libyans have been denied that opportunity, not just in the past 10 years, but if you want to go back for decades. And it is deeply saddening that in 2011, so many Libyans fought for the right to choose their own leadership, which is a basic human right, which is actually self-determination, is enshrined the UN Charter. And still 10 years later, we are arguing for our right to choose our own leadership. This has been a tragedy for Libya, but I feel that this is soon going to be rectified. Indeed, December 24th is a very symbolic day for Libya. Almost half a century ago, we gained our independence, and we gained our independence with the help of the UN. And ironically, in the past 10 years, the UN had circumvented democracy in Libya, and it supplanted and usurped the sovereign rights of Libya. Many audiences are not aware of this, but since 2015, Libya has been governed by a UN-appointed government, which makes it a foreign-appointed government. And this is unprecedented. The GNA, for example, was supposed to govern Libya as an interim government, but it stayed on for 6 years. And my concerns about these elections began in the September of 2020. So finally, the international community realized that a political solution is the only solution. And what we mean by political solution is actual elections, Libyans choosing their own government, democracy, a legitimate democracy through legitimate elections. However, in September, Unsung announced a Libyan political dialogue forum to create an interim government to replace an interim government. And this was, to me, and still is, ridiculous. You do not create an interim government to replace an interim government. I feel that the process towards elections could have been worked out with the existing interim government, the GNA. And any other kind of way would have created more institutions, more bodies, and created political gridlock. But most of all, it would have created conflict of interest. And we have seen this play out in the past few months. In fact, I would argue we've seen this conflict of interest play out in the past 10 months. Because even though Libyans were excited about the GNU, they had faith in it, I myself was willing to give the GNU the benefit of the doubt. But it became clear quite immediately that the GNU was not dedicated to its mandate. And what was its mandate? Unify military institutions and prepare for elections, and to expel all foreign mercenaries, in specific Turkish and Russian mercenaries. Rather than that, rather than dedicate itself to its mandate, we saw the GNU engaging in stealth campaigning. And this was a warning sign. When the interim prime minister spends more time abroad than he does visiting cities in Libya, this is a bad sign. And even if we look at this approach from the perspective of human nature, one would have to be very, very naive to think that a government that had been appointed and not elected by its own people will willingly relinquish power. I think it is an axiom. There's nothing more permanent than what is temporary. However, on the bright side, there has never been so much international support for elections in Libya. And this is very, very positive. The United States is very much dedicated to making sure democracy is restored in Libya. The last time we had elections was in 2014. And we know that when Americans want something done, they do, they make it happen. So I think these elections are very, very important. Despite spoilers, despite people who want to derail them, I think the Libyans have spoken. There are around 2.5 million Libyans who have collected their voter cards. 2.5 million Libyans who want to vote. And also to mention that there are over 5,000 Libyans who are running for candidates for parliamentary seats. So I am confident that elections will happen. Either they will be postponed a little bit, but elections will happen. And elections can be a very powerful tool for peace building. However, to make sure that elections are a powerful tool for peace building, there are certain conditions. First of all, they need to be legitimate, and they also need to be perceived as legitimate by the population. And this is where we see, this is where Dr. Nayed mentions the violations of the previous interim prime minister that cannot be allowed to spoil the elections. But also, you need a guarantor. You need external guarantors, third-party nations who can say, we are going to guarantee the results of the elections. This is, of course, to avoid cases like in 2014, where militias didn't like the results, so they just invaded the capital and removed the parliament. So it is also important, I think, that superpowers, the UN Security Council resolutions makes it very, very clear that regardless of attempts to spoil elections, we will enforce the results of elections. We will exercise our powers for sanctions and containment to any spoilers. So I'm just going to wrap up. I think I took more time than I intended. And I'd like to say that these elections are very crucial, not just for Libyans, but for the region. A failed Libyan state is not only a threat to its own citizens, but it's the region as well. A Libya without sovereignty turns it into a proxy state that can be a danger, that can be exploited by other predatory countries to not only harm Europe, but also extend nefarious influence on the continent of Africa. So with that, I am very excited of elections, the upcoming ones. I have a pretty good idea who I'll be voting for, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much, Ihya. We're also very excited, not only for the election, but also for the discussion we are going to open. The floor is open for questions, and if you give me the privilege as a moderator to ask one question to both of you for opening the discussion. I would like to ask both of you about the problem mentioned by Dr. Aref. We understand very well, because in many countries in the world, there are some clauses for candidates. They have to resign from very official places. In some countries, 6 months before the election. In other countries, as you mentioned, in 3 months election. It is something understandable, but countries, they have to follow also decisions of the highest court, either constitutional court or other judicial authorities. This is the case also for Libya. But tell me, after what you have said, what is the problem for Mr. Gaddafi? It is because of his past, or there are some complications we don't know or we don't understand very well in this discussion. Could you tell us? And my second question, thank you very much. You mentioned, you said openly, you have used a very, very real language, which is very important for the whole discussion. You said that we need a guarantor, someone or a committee or something organized by the international community. From the experience in international relations, we understand also this very well. But could you tell us some ideas? Because I see that there is an effort from the Libyan people and Libyan parties to go to a solution through a Libyan procedure. And I'm sure that Dr. Aref, as one of the candidates running for the presidency, could add some more political explanations for this Libyan solution without or with the mediation of some facilitator. Thank you very much.
First of all, regarding the candidate Saiful Islam Gaddafi, I myself publicly defended his right to run, and I defended his right to get due process from the Libyan judiciary. And indeed, even though the Electoral Commission itself managed to exclude him at the beginning, he sued successfully to be included. And when they tried to sue at the higher level of appeal, they lost. So technically, by judicial decree, he is on the list, or should be on the list. However, now the whole matter is before the Supreme Judicial Council with the new head, and in consultation with a special commission from the Parliament, which has the mandate of reviewing the compliance between the Electoral Commission's activities and the law. You know, technically they cannot review the judiciary, but the Supreme Council of the juridical Supreme Council can. This is the discussion that's happening. I'm not privy to all the legal details in his file, but apparently the matter pertains to interpretation of what it means to have juridical issues in your file. Because the law clearly says that you can only be excluded if there are final judgments against you by the judiciary, and there are no final judgments in the Libyan judiciary, but some people believe that there are some judgments. There was a lot of confusion because there were some judgments that then were struck down by the Supreme Court, and some people say that the procedure was not correct. There is also the question of the ICC, and the ICC has recently issued a red notice on him. Will the Libyan judiciary, the prosecutor general, will he take this red notice into consideration and consider it to be against him in the procedure? So there is also the question about the amnesty law, which was passed by the House of Representatives some years back. Does it apply to him? Does it not apply to him? So it's a bit of a juridical issue, but there are also political issues. To be very frank, you know, the Libyan revolution was a popular uprising, but there were also, it resulted in the dominance of certain cities and certain centers of power, and also certain ideological streaks within the country. And these ruling elites, if you like, find it very worrying that Saif would be able to run. So there is a lot of political pressure also on the Electoral Commission. There is also some international pressure, I think, because various countries who participated in the action against the Libyan regime in 2011 may find it quite nerve-wracking to re-see a Gaddafi in power in Libya. So this is why I think the file is fraught with difficulty. And we just hope that the Electoral Commission with the judiciary and the parliament can make up their mind as quickly as possible and issue the final list. This is regarding what you asked me about Saif al-Islam. Regarding the oversight of the elections, you know, as Ms. Burweila was saying, that it has been a UN process throughout. We have been under Chapter 7 since resolutions, UN Security Council resolutions 1970, 1973 of 2011, which have been reaffirmed by various subsequent resolutions. And this entire process has been UN designed in many ways. However, at every step, presumably to respect local sovereignty, it has been acts of parliament that have been governing it. So the elections will be held under the electoral laws passed by Libya's parliament, which is a duly elected parliament. Indeed, it has overstayed its provision time. However, it is the last elected body, and therefore it is the one body that does represent the sovereignty of Libya. And the law is passed by that parliament. That's why the violations by the Prime Minister of clause number 12 of the electoral law is quite problematic. So should it be totally Libyan oversight of the election? I think that most Libyans, from at least the surveys that we read and the opinion polls and what we hear on social media and on television analytic programs, seem to be, yes, we want Libyan sovereignty and the parliament to be involved, but there is a willingness to make sure that there is monitoring. I myself made huge efforts to try to get the African Union to help as much as possible because of the perceived neutrality. And I visited the Congo Democratic Republic and Uganda in that perspective very recently and spoke with both presidents of both countries. There are others who are bringing in monitors, you know, from NGOs and international organizations. I think this kind of hybrid monitoring by both Libya's sovereign parliament and various independent actors can go a long way in giving the kind of assurance and trust that we need in the process. Very importantly also is the aftermath and the acceptance of the results of the elections. That's why I was thinking the African Union, if it gets the support of the United States and of the European Union, can actually play a part in making sure the results get implemented. But that's a completely different story. I will stop here to give an opportunity to address the question you asked her. Sorry for taking too long.
So Dr. Theodoros, thank you for your question. I think the matter of implementation is very, very important. Our capital is still run by militias. And some of these militias have connections to the interim government, unity government. So it is very important. We have seen huge attempts by the present interim unity government to cheat Libyans of elections. When you violate your pledge, to the UN, not to run, when you use your time and power to campaign and giving yourself an unfair advantage using public funds, that is a form of cheating. Violating Libyan electoral law is also cheating. And I don't think it goes, you don't have to be a corruption expert to know that you cannot have the wolf guarding the hen house. You cannot have an interim government invested in staying with all the powers of monitoring to be involved in the competition. I like to tell my friends that when we women get invitations from the online shops that we shop from, and there's a competition, even there is a disclaimer saying people who are related to the staff of Amazon, or they're related to the staff of, I don't know, any store, are not allowed to run. So what we see here is flagrant and obscene conflict of interest and a premeditated attempt to destroy the legitimacy of the elections. And I think the UN Security Council resolutions, the last two ones on Libya, were very, very clear about sanctioning spoilers. And there has been many spoilers, from militias besieging election polls and so forth. So I think the international community definitely has to make it clear. There's been plenty of research on this matter, on how to make elections a useful tool of peace building. But the present government and all actors, and I'm talking about armed actors, not just political bodies, know that there is other powers who will enforce the results. They need to say, and there are many tools available. For example, sanctions. The US Treasury can cause huge damage to many actors just by sanctions. There can be immediate withdrawal of recognition of the GNU. And this is very important. And this doesn't even require military efforts or intervention. If you make it clear from the very beginning, and I insisted on this for the past year, that the international community needs to de-incentivize spoilers in the GNU and let them know, well, guess what? You're responsible for making these elections happen. And if they don't happen, you're simply not going to be the recognized interim government of Libya anymore. So these are just basic tools that the international community can use. Sanctioning spoilers, withdrawing recognition. Another important thing that Dr. Aref mentioned is monitoring. We are seeing a present government that is already engaged in cheating. And I find it very ironic when a president, usually I like to say that politicians usually lie after they get a power. It is really rare to see a politician who starts lying before they gain power. But it's also descriptive of the lack, the comfort so many actors feel in Libya to act as spoilers, to act with impunity. So I think it's very important to have monitors at polling stations, independent ones, patriotic ones, to make sure there's no cheating, there is no intimidation of voters. So these are ways that both Libyans and the international community can ensure free and fair elections.
Thank you very much, Ihya. You keep open many issues to discuss, and I see Professor Nomikos raising his hand. Please, Professor, go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm very happy to see familiar places. You know, I'm speaking on behalf of the Research Institute for European and American Studies here based in Athens, Greece, where I'm a chairman since 2006. So I'm very happy to see familiar faces like Dr. Aref, Mr. Sohaili, and Ihya Burweila, who's the RIES senior analyst, and so on. Good morning to all of you. I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic that the elections in Libya is going to be on time. The Libya people have the right to vote, you know, and the Libya sovereignty is there. And I think, you know, that no matter what Turkey and Mr. Erdogan is trying to do, he's going to fail. Now, this is a very short comment. Now, I want to ask a very short question because I know time is very valuable. to all of the speakers. First of all, how do you see the Muslim Brotherhood supported primarily by the Turkey regime, you know, Mr. Erdogan, and how you see all these illegal missionary coming from Ankara to Libya, who are trying to make as many problems they could in order, you know, to destabilize the election that the Libyan people are expecting, you know, on 24th of December. Thank you. Dr. Aref, Libya.
Hello.
Yes, we are listening to you,
Yes.
Dr.
Yeah,
Aref.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, let me first of all say that I'm very, how can I say, very glad that some themes are coming up, because I think these themes are of vital importance. First of all, the theme of conflict of interest. I will give you two very simple examples that have happened recently that are actually quite worrying. The first case of conflict of interest pertains to the interior minister of the current national unity government. The interior minister, when we won the case against the prime minister and the court decided to exclude him, this is before he won the appeal, came out in a news conference with the Minister of Justice and said that he has serious concerns about the security of Tripoli and other places, and that he is now worried that we may not be able to have elections. As soon as the appeals court struck down the judgment that was in our favor, and the prime minister was again on the list, the same interior minister came out and said, we feel that confident that we will be able to secure the election. You know, this ability to certify the security of the election, or the to warn of the insecurity of the election, is something that's held by a minister who's under the prime minister, who's competing in the election, okay, or who at least trying to compete in the election. This is a very serious conflict of interest, apart from the monitoring that they will be doing and the security of the various candidates and other things. Another flagrant conflict of interest case happened very recently. Apparently, the prime minister, because to enter into the competition for the presidency of Libya, you have to have a university degree. You have to have a bachelor's of science or a bachelor of arts, but a university degree. It turns out that the prime minister submitted a certificate of equivalence from his own minister of education. There is an office within the Ministry of Education that certifies that certain foreign degrees are the equivalent of the Libyan degrees. So he actually certified that he has a master's degree from Regina University in Canada. And this certificate has the stamp of the of the Education Ministry of Libya and the commission, and it refers to a meeting in which this was discussed. It turns out that the alleged credentials from Regina University do not exist. The university in Canada has publicly said that it has no record of this student whatsoever. So it was a fake degree, and he has no bachelor's degree, he has no master's degree. And the master's degree that was certified by the Libyan Ministry of Education not only is false, but the certification from the ministry is false and was issued in favor of the prime minister, who's a competitor in the election. So this is another case of a conflict of interest. So what the question to be asked is, how can anyone compete with a competitor who has a budget of 100 billion dinars under his control, and who can issue his own educational certificates, and who can certify that the election is safe or unsafe, depending on what's in his favor, and who can do multiple other things with the instrument of government. So I'm glad the issue of conflict of interest was raised by my colleague. The other thing is the problem of recognition. The roadmap envisioned a government that would have a maximum of 18 months, but that period of 18 months was truncated by the parliament. When the parliament gave the recognition to the Dbeiba government, it said that this recognition ends on the 24th of December. And he himself accepted the decree of the confidence, including that clause, publicly. And also the Presidential Council accepted that recognition with that clause. So the entire executive, both the Prime Minister and the Presidential Council, accept the truncation of the government at December 24th. So it will be finished. There will be no government on the 24th of December, let alone a recognized government. Now we have a problem. People are speaking and saying, what we need continuity. What will happen after the 24th? Well, the plan of the current Prime Minister is to procrastinate by withholding the elections if he thinks he's losing or if he has an issue, so that his government will continue after the 24th. And if he can run for the election and he is confident that he can win it because he would do enough campaigning using the media instruments of the state and the money of the state and all the ministries of the state, then he will go for the election. So under these circumstances, this cannot be called a free and fair election. This is why we believe that the participation of the current Prime Minister in the election is toxic and must actually be really focused on, because with such a setup, he will automatically win, or he can ruin the election and automatically continue to rule. So the recognition of this government, to be absolutely clear, there is no parliamentarian recognition of this government after the 24th of December. And this is one of the points that we made. I signed with another 18 candidates as a statement very recently, the day before yesterday. Furthermore, when the parliament gave him the recognition and put this date limiting the recognition to 24th of December, there was a welcoming statement by the United Nations Security Council, welcoming the recognition that was given by the parliament and saying that this government will end on the 24th of December. This is a very important point. I'm very happy to see my old friend Nomikos and Kalispera Nomikos. It's very nice to see you. He points out to foreign intervention in Libya. It's no secret that the current government has been very friendly to Turkey. Turkey has been very friendly to this current government. And it's very important to realize that there is a lot of vested interest of the Muslim Brotherhood in the continuity of this current government, which has been on a very friendly basis, not only militarily, with still Turkish forces and mercenaries being on Libyan soil, and the mercenaries are actually Syrian Islamists mainly, and also the financial dealings between the Central Bank of Libya and the Turkish banks, which continue until today. All of this is a very cozy arrangement. It has to end, and the only thing that can end it are free and fair elections in which there is no conflict of interest, and in which the current Prime Minister cannot run because he did sign 2 pledges not to run. And if they want to include him on the list, then all the powers of the state have to be taken away from him. You cannot exercise the powers of the state to unfairly win an election. So I hope I addressed Nomikos' question and also the 2 points raised by Ihya. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So Ihya, do you like to comment on the questions of Professor Nomikos?
Yes, first, thank you, Dr. Nomikos, for your questions. It's good to see you again. When we say conflict of interest, let's be clear, we are talking about corruption, flagrant corruption. And I believe corruption kills. It is the silent killer, and in Libya, it is a not so silent killer. We have lost our sovereignty. We have occupation in the west of our country. We have leaders that Libyans have not elected. Leaders who are loyal to foreign powers that support them with mercenaries and with arms, and who are in the process currently of staging a coup. What Dbeibeh is attempting to do is a coup. Let us call it what it is, via political means, via violent intimidation, with his affiliations with militias, Islamist militias, and through corruption of the judicial process. And what Libya needs is what all country needs for development: security, first and foremost, and second of all, institutions. There's a huge lack of institutions in Libya, which of course dates back to the Gaddafi era. So we need, at this stage, Dr. Naib mentioned the forgery of educational credentials. Imagine, and to me, this is so symbolic of the corruption in Libya today. When we have not even a leader, imagine any human being forging credentials. This is illegal. And one of the questions I think Libyans, beyond elections, the need to inquire, need to investigate, is how such a situation was brought about in the first place. How was a UN process a means to deliver such a situation, such a corrupt government with such corrupt individuals? Because this is not the first time this has happened in Libya. This happened to us again in 2015. We had elections in Libya in 2014, and this goes back to what Dr. Nomikos said about the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamist parties. We had elections in 2014, Islamist parties lost, and what happened? A coalition of Islamist militias, nominally from Misrata, simply invaded the capital. And they forced the parliament out of the capital. And this is why our parliament is right now in Tobruk. And this is how the Libyan divide happened. And this was a crucial moment in Libya's recent history. So this has been done before, and now we see the same networks and the same places return once again via UN process in power in Libya. So Libyans know who to elect. Even when they say there are so many candidates, Libya is a very small country, by the way. We're around 7 million people. Most people know who's who. We see these, we know who to select. And we have never selected the GNA, which saw, I think the GNA in 6 years spent around 120 billion with no accountability, while Libyans today have no regular access to stable electricity. The UN appointed government, the GNA, brought in foreign occupation. This is something Libyans haven't seen in decades. Our ancestors fought to remove foreign occupation. And it took a UN foreign appointed government to bring in foreign occupation. So we keep seeing a pattern of flawed UN processes that keep circumventing the Libyans' basic right to sovereignty and self-determination. Libyans, so wherever I see large-scale corruption of a judicial process, I see flawed UN processes. And the problem that we are facing today begins with the creation of the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, which I feel was incredibly unnecessary. I feel that the more streamlined the processes, the less room there is for corruption. This should have been easily done by the GNA, which was already existing, and the parliament. We cannot forget that the Libyan parliament is the only constitutional and legislative body in Libya until Libyans elect a new parliament. And a parliament is the only legitimate body that can create a government. So I feel that all this corruption, I feel that because this is once again a situation that we've seen before, there needs to also be a mechanism for Libyans to hold UN processes accountable. When I see as a Libyan citizen problems of corruption in the UN, for example, the LPDF was racked with reports of bribery. This is the forum that elected the interim government, the GNU. There was accusations of bribery from the very beginning. There were conflicts of interest from the very beginning. The present interim prime minister's uncle was part of the voting bloc to select the interim government. In what world is that possible? In what legitimate context is that possible? And Libyans saw this. They see this blatant conflict of interest. They see 75 random people chosen by Unsung to represent them when they don't. Because when you say you represent Libya, you have to be voted by somebody, not appointed by a foreign body. So immediately in the LPDF process, we saw reports, serious reports of bribery. The LPDF process was not halted to investigate these cases of bribery, which is the normal procedure in any institution. And we had the LPDF go on. And finally, the UN panel of experts investigated these allegations of bribery in the LPDF. And they finally published a report, and it was all redacted. Now, as a Libyan citizen, where the fate of your country and your basic rights are on the balance, what are the recourse for the Libyan citizen to hold a UN process that is not only perceived to be corrupt, but has been shown to be corrupt, accountable? So these are things that I hope Libyans can explore further and after the elections, to see in the past, because Libyans have suffered for 10 years from flawed international processes, how these things were possible, how to hold people accountable, because I think we must start showing an example that there can be no more impunity for anybody. And what I like about the initiative Dr. Nayed and I believe it was 17 other presidential candidates did, is they said that we are willing to accept the results of elections. Each 18 candidate is essentially saying, yes, I risk losing and I'm happy to do that. This is how you instill confidence in an electoral process. Not I am going to do everything I can to cheat, everything I can to defraud Libyans, and have no consequences whatsoever from the international community that helped install me. So I insist again, the international community can play a huge role simply by following its own resolutions and Libyan and international law. So I hope in December 24th, Libyans, as well as the international community, start holding politicians accountable.
Thank you very much, both of you. I don't see a raised hand, and I'll take advantage of my position to ask Dr. Aref, as you are running for the presidency, and because you get the feeling of the country, we all see that the situation is very complicated and difficult. And during the whole presentation, we have mentioned certain cases and complicated situations, especially dealing with the application of laws and the rights of people to participate or not participate. But tell me, you and like-minded people, what do you propose? Ihya mentioned that this common decision and your declaration that you are ready to respect the results, but before arriving to the election, in an effort to create a more positive atmosphere, political atmosphere in the country, what is your effort and what are your proposals combining the wishes of Libyan people so that they feel that you are moving to a more secure political environment, taking into account, and I will come later to that, that you are one of the important factors in international developments, especially in developments in your neighborhood and the wider MENA region. Please, Dr. Aref, the floor is yours. Microphone.
Can you open the microphone?
Yeah,
please?
sorry. As you rightly say, the positive atmosphere is very important. And in the spirit of trying to have a positive atmosphere for the elections, even though we are competitors for the presidency, technically, the candidates got together. And the core group now is about 18, and it's increasing. We are hoping to have as many as possible, and we are due to meet with each other face-to-face in Sirt on the 20th of the month. In order to sign a declaration of goodwill and of good intent, and a declaration to commit to the results of the election. But you know, the one problematic issue that we have, all of us, is the conflict of interest issue with the current prime minister. We believe that if there is one spoiling factor for the Libyan election, it is the participation of the current prime minister. Under the circumstances of his participation, I don't think it will be very possible that it will be possible to have proper elections. And that's why this matter is of the utmost importance. We are very respectful of the efforts of the Electoral Commission and the Supreme Judicial Commission of Libya, which fortunately has just changed its leadership because of certain concerns. We believe that they should be able to resolve the issue and issue the list as soon as possible. This is the most positive thing that can happen, is the removal of the current prime minister from the list. And we hope that the international community will help us in this regard, because they are the ones who are supposedly the guarantors of this process. Just for your information, I was part of the Geneva process, and my name was listed amongst the candidates that were competing in Geneva. But when I saw that there was a condition that I would not be able to run in the next election, I respectfully withdrew my name. Now I am finding myself competing with the very guy who took the position unfairly, and by basically tricking us, promising not to run and then running after he has acquired all the instruments of the state to help him. So I think this kind of reward of impropriety and the encouragement, you know, of behavior with total impunity is really the most destructive thing to the electoral process. To put things positively, I believe that all the other candidates are more than happy to run against each other fairly, and are more than happy to basically respect our next president, whoever it is, because he is duly or she is duly elected. Because I'm happy that there are 2 women candidates as well, which is an important development in our history. So positivity happens if we are serious, if the international community is serious, and if we're all serious, and if we don't accept nonsense, we don't accept fake credentials, we don't accept forgery, we don't accept fraud, we don't accept corruption, we don't accept conflict of interest, we don't accept bullying. You know, a young man who actually blew the whistle and pointed out to possible bribery of the judiciary was actually kidnapped. We still don't know where he is until today. His name is Hamza Treki. You know, he was kidnapped in Misrata. So we want to have our elections. We're very positive about them, but we're also very adamant that what is not acceptable in any sovereign democratic country should not be acceptable in Libya, and the incumbent should not be running because he violates Libyan laws, and because he violates the commitment he made to the UN, and we're signatories to the UN Charter, and Libya is still under Chapter 7. I believe that it was a legally binding commitment, and the UN unfortunately has done nothing about this. You know, the questions raised about UNSMIL's processes is very important. In Geneva, the gentleman concerned submitted a CV saying that he has 2 degrees from the University of Toronto. Apparently, nobody ever checked from UNSMIL whether with the University of Toronto if he actually does have those degrees. And this is very, very sad, because he actually managed to run when he wasn't qualified to even run for the position. And when we say run, it wasn't a democracy. Run in the committee of 75, which was 13 members from the parliament, 13 members from the state council, which is not supposed to be a second chamber, but only a consultative chamber. And the rest were hand-picked. I don't know with what criterion, because, for example, the tribe of Tarhuna, which is about 800,000 people, didn't have a seat. And then another city had 7 seats, which is less than half of its size. So that kind of discrepancy, which we wrote again and again to the UN about, was never heard, unfortunately. Our calls were never heard. And this is why we have this mess. Despite all this, we are insistent on running for the election. We're insisting that the election happens, and we're fighting as hard as we can on a daily basis. Thank you very much.
If I may add, if you leave Libyans we've talked about spoilers, but let's talk about the unsung heroes in Libya. I think Ahmed Sayeh of the High National Election Commission has done an excellent job under impossible circumstances, under intimidation from various bodies, from the and spoiler activities from the present interim government. And there are many people on the ground. Dr. Nayev, other candidates, other NGOs and civil society organizations that have been really committed to making sure that Libyans get their country back. So there's a lot of momentum. 2.5 million Libyans have collected their voter cards. There's even a huge appetite for the parliamentary seats. And we can see how enthusiastic Libyans are to have free and fair elections, which makes it even more important that we cannot have anybody with proclivities or a history of fraud to spoil this historic opportunity for Libyans. I think respect for the rule of law needs to start, and needs to start now. And when foreign countries say we're hoping to work towards free and fair elections, first of all, when I hear the word hope, I just get an allergic reaction, because we know there's no point. There's only action at the stage. We know what needs to be done. It's not rocket science. It's not a mystery. We just need to follow the rule of law and common sense. And I think if the countries who are serious about having elections, restoring order, restoring sovereignty, restoring peace in Libya, are serious about these elections, they need to start making demands. UNSML, to which Prime Minister Dbeibeh pledged to, needs to break its silence. Now, UNSML can be very, very vocal, and all of Libyans are noticing that they've been silent through the violation of UNSML's own roadmap. This needs to change. As I said earlier in our discussion, when it comes to using elections as a tool of peace building, it is not only important that elections are legitimate technically, but also that they are perceived to be legitimate by the people. So perception is very important in the field of electoral legitimacy. So I think in these run up to the elections, we are on the last leg. This is the 11th hour. I think UNSML has to be very robust and very clear, and the United Nations Security Council, that there will be consequences for spoilers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, if you allow me to ask Dr. Aref, after the very interesting presentation we had for the country, allow me to go a little bit to international issues. And I would like to ask directly two questions. What is the role Greece could play in today in the evolution of Libyan reality? And could you also tell me what points do you include in your campaign concerning bilateral relations, I mean, between Libya and Greece, and also the international law of Libya in the region, as I mentioned before. Thank you very much, Dr. Aref.
Aristopoli, let me say this. You know, on a very clear day from the Green Mountain in Libya, when the horizon is very clear, it is possible to see a thin line, which is Crete, and we are so close geographically. People are shocked when I tell them that by flight, you know, Benghazi Athens is only 50 minutes, you know, and Tripoli Rome is only 50 minutes. We are very, very close. Historically, you know, we are now drawing our maps, and we think of the land as what's important on the map. But if you look at our maps and look at the Mediterranean as the center, and look at it as a body, as the central body, you can see that we are actually part of this one Mediterranean civilization that is actually very, very ancient, very, very revered. You know, one of the students of Socrates came and settled in Cyrene, and he was a teacher there and started the Cyrenaic school of philosophy that produced the first woman philosopher in the world's history. Her name was Arete, and these Greek cities were part of the very rich history of Libya, and Libya has seen so many civilizations. But the Mediterranean unites us, and I believe that we need to take each other seriously, to look at our security as a collective Mediterranean security, to look at our well-being as a collective Mediterranean well-being, the issues of the gas in the Mediterranean, the issues of fisheries, the issues of trade and trade lines, the issues of also military security. We cannot do this in an isolated way. Greece has a very long history with Libya, and it has seen periods of very serious activity and periods of maybe a little bit of negligence in relations. I look forward, and it's part of our program, if I do become president, to rebuilding Libyan-Greek relations to the highest possible, through not only economic collaboration in multiple industries and multiple sectors, technological cooperation, oil and gas cooperation, also the production of solar energy in Libya, which has some of the best exposure, and exporting of that energy across the Mediterranean through Greek territory. So there is so much to do with Greece. The question of what can Greece do now? Greece is part of the European Union. It has an influence within the European Union that it can leverage. I met with the ambassador of the European Union just a few days ago, and I have worked with your esteemed foreign ministry and your ambassador to Libya and your consulate in Benghazi before. I think that there is so much that Greece can do. Number one is to lobby for the rights of the Libyan people to elect their own president and their own parliament. Number two is to simply demand of the European Union, and this is what I told the ambassador, all we ask you is to apply your own standards to us. Just apply European Union standards of fair and the free elections. You know, your own standards reject bribery. Your own standards reject conflict of interest. Your own standards reject intimidation. So all we ask is that Greece lobbies the European Union to be very serious about its standards. We ask that you try to help us to monitor the election by sending monitors, by lobbying the European Union to be serious about helping Libyan electoral commission. That's what you can currently do, is to try to make sure that we have elections and to try to make sure that these elections are fair through as much assistance as you can. Regarding the bilateral relations, our vision is of a Libya that is a gateway between Europe and Africa. This is part of our strategic plan for the country, which is published on IhyaLibya.com. That's IHYA Libya.com. And this is the historical position of Libya. Herodotus, in his histories, wrote that from Libya comes everything new. The reason everything new came from Libya was because Africa came to Greece through Libya. So, and the ancient roads which still exist, unfortunately, now there are roads for smuggling of illegal immigrants and drugs and weapons and all sorts of things. These routes still exist. These routes can be transformed into highways that can connect the ports of Tripoli, Benghazi, and Misrata, and Derna, and Susa with the interior of Africa, all the way to Central Africa. And you know, the ancient trade routes between Libya and Greece can be revived with a brisk shipping line traffic, so that we can actually have a transit commerce between Europe and Africa through Libya. Also, we believe that Libya should not only tap into its African heritage and its African connectivity, but also its Arab neighbors, as well as its European neighbors. I truly believe in a world of rising superpowers like China, and Russia's role, and the developments in North and South America. Europe cannot really make it on its own. Europe needs Africa, and Africa cannot make it on its own. Africa needs Europe. I believe that Libya and Greece can actually be the link, can actually be the coupling system between Europe and Africa, and there is so much to do in this regard. This is just an outline of what we plan in terms of bilateral relations in the context of international global relations, and more can be found on my website arefnight.com and also ihyalibya.com, and we'll be more than happy to communicate with you. We very much appreciate the very deep experience of your institute and the network of scholars and specialists that you have, and we hope, if I do become president, to increase this collaboration. We already have an MOU with you, with Libya Institute for Advanced Studies, which is our own private institute. But if we do have this presidency, inshallah, we will have twin universities between us. We would like to revive archaeology in a big way in Libya, so that it can be the basis of a thriving tourism industry. There is so much to do together. Also in agricultural research, various other types of research, cultural exchange. I thank you very much for this opportunity. I very much enjoyed this discussion, and I thank my colleague Ihya Burweila for a very insightful analysis, and for all the participants, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aref. I would, you give me an opportunity to address probably the last question to Ihya, because we started with Dr. Aref. We have to finish with you, Ihya. Dr. Aref mentioned and gave us some important information about the international realities. I would like to ask you the following. Taking advantage of your mentioning that you are a Libyan citizen, I'd like to listen from you an answer as a representative of the people. Now, my question is the following. Do you think that international realities and complications referring to the sea zones, exclusive economic zone, and problems we all are facing in the region because of the Turkish position, do they affect the decision of Libyan people? And tell me, please, explaining this situation, what are Libyan people expecting of the new leadership which will come through the elections in the country? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. And my answer is actually going to go back to your previous question to Dr. Nayev about what Greece and Libya has in common. Our fates are tied, and nothing has exemplified that so much as the unlawful maritime deal that was struck between Turkey and the previous government of national accord. So I think Greece immediately understood that lack of sovereignty in Libya, lack of a legitimate government, lack of a responsible government directly affects the security interests, not only of Libyans, but of Greece as well. The GNA, especially in its last few years, the GNA became a full-fledged proxy of the Turkish government, very much how the government in Northern Cyprus is a proxy for Turkey. And this is basically the strategy of Turkey in the Mediterranean to replicate what it has done in Northern Cyprus in West Libya. As you know, the maritime deal did not pass through the Libyan parliament. It has never been voted on. In fact, it had been explicitly rejected by the Libyan House of Parliament, the only legislative body in Libya. So we see and it is really sad that we're in the 21st century and we still have to remind people how destructive lack of sovereignty is, how unacceptable it is to have a proxy government. You know, Libya used to be a colony, and I said we removed a foreign occupation, and that we are in the 21st century and that we are dealing with a similar situation under different labels is totally unacceptable. So just from the maritime deal and the military deal with Turkey, we can see how the fate of Libyans, the lack of democracy in Libya directly affects Greece. Greece, of course, has everything, has much to offer Libya. We also, and a very important point, we have a very friendly relationship with Greece. We have an old Greek community in Libya. Our relationship does not have any historical baggage and it has never experienced a predatorial relationship with Greece, which is very, very rare, especially in the past 10 years, where our country has been the site of many foreign interests and proxy wars. So I think this is one way I can describe how Greece has been affected by events in Libya directly. I think also Greece can play a huge role, especially institutions like the European Public Law Organization, in building institutions of learning. I think expertise transfer in that realm is very, very important. How we can build institutions that promote the rule of law, know how to build public institutions, and this is one of the major things I think Greece can also help assist Libya with. As what Libyans expect of our future candidates, of course, this is a question that depends on who wins. May the best man win. I am happy to accept any, and I think all Libyan citizens feel that way. We are happy to accept anybody who wins freely and fairly. I think what we do expect from all candidates, regardless of who they are, is first and foremost, a counter-corruption task force. Libyans are very, very tired. If there's anything that will get them riled up, is reports of corruption, which has become all too normalized. So I think a counter-corruption task force to recover stolen Libyan funds and to go through a proper audit of the past 6 years. You need, and these are things people need to see, any people need to see, especially right now when, you know, Libya is one of the foremost oil producer in Africa, and yet they don't have access to stable electricity, to competitive healthcare. Our education system is in shambles, and this is just unacceptable. And Libyans really want to see changes on that front. So corruption is first and foremost on the minds of Libyans, and of course, security. I think any president who wins has to work towards dismantling the militias or isolating the militias. And this is actually, we didn't get the chance to actually go into this in depth. So today, in the capital, where all the public institutions are, there are militias. It's occupying the capital. And in Masrat as well, and in Tripoli. And we mentioned a case earlier about a man being kidnapped for talking about corruption. This needs to stop. In the meantime, because I do think that it is a challenge to get militias that have entrenched themselves in the capital to dismantle quickly. I don't think there are many gangsters who are actually willingly give up power, especially when it's so lucrative. I think we have to think strategically, and to circumvent this problem, we have to start seriously thinking about removing public institutions from the capital to somewhere more neutral and safe, like the city of Sirt. We cannot be held hostages to a militia cartel anymore. And this is very, very important. It is easily done. It is hard. It's easy to move people and to relocate these institutions to somewhere where militias cannot hold them hostage. So this is something I expect any president to have to deal with until all militias are dismantled and all foreign mercenaries are removed. And then after that, I think a reinvestment in education, job opportunities. We have one of the highest youth unemployment rate in the world. So any president would have to start doing that and to start focusing on and diversify our GDP away from oil. And this goes back to, of course, creating more foreign investment through partnerships with other countries like Greece, the EU, or Arab neighbors. So these are basic things that I think Libyans expect to see from a sovereign and accountable government.
Thank you very much, both of you. I would like to ask if we have some more time, or do we have to close the meeting now? Because they told me before starting that we have to finish at 2:30. No answer. So I thank you very much, both of you, for this fruitful exchange of ideas. I think that we have to continue this exchange and approach of Libya up to the moment Libyan people decide for their future. From my side, I could only wish full success in the effort of the Libyan people and also in your effort, Dr. Aref. So the future is coming close, and I'm sure that you and your people you'll keep your commitment concerning the democratic procedure in your country. Concerning people, they misuse the opportunities to have during the period that they are leading the country, either because they are selected to organize an interim regime, or we have also cases elected people, they misuse the rights they have and the opportunities. It is a reality of democracy, and democracy has the means to give answers to all these political questions, which are sometimes also questions they refer to the society. After the difficult experience Libyan people had through the years, I'm sure they got maturity. Candidates, they have to find the solution to keep Libyans together. And in purpose, I don't say, and I don't refer to tribes, because all are Libyan citizens. And I'm sure that they feel that and they know that. And that's why they are working for the best of the country. Thank you very much once again for the participation. and the interesting exchange of ideas.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Καλησπέρα σε όλους σας. And γεια σας, γεια χαρά.
Ahlan wa sahlan.
Και εγώ ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για αυτή την ευκαιρία και μακάρι να έχουμε τα εκλογές σύντομα. Και ευχάριστα. Thank you. Γεια σας.
Bye.